it's been nice to do this every semester and to think about what part of what I really always talk about, what part of that I want to talk about and kind of rework it. It's been really useful to me this time to really be looking at our relationship with technology, particularly given my own relationship with technology. So I am clearly a person of the who did much of the studying and whatever that kind of thing in a non-computer age. And as the last probably 25 years of my life have gone on, I've increasingly had to have access to and the use of technology to be able to perform the jobs that I want to perform and that I like to perform. And I would have to say at this point almost every year the technology gets more challenging for me. And so working on this particular presentation has been really useful to me because it gave me a different way to have a different window on my own relationship with technology, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you about, is your relationship with technology. However, we're going to start with an experiment, and so this is my technology. This is the technology of mindfulness. So this is just a singing bell, and I'm going to come and stand over here where more people can hear it. And all I'm going to ask you to do right now is just to close your eyes. And I'm going to hit the bell. The bell has a long reverberation, lasts for a long time. So I'm just asking you to close your eyes and listen to it. And when you can't hear it anymore, just to raise your hand. So you want to close your eyes and take a breath. And then just listen. Okay. That wasn't a very good hit. I'm actually take another breath. And I'm going to try it again because I didn't like that hit. Okay. And if you were standing right here actually and heard me put my hand on it, you'd hear it's still really ringing quite a bit. So that's an introduction to mindfulness. That's mindfulness. That's taking your attention, taking the cognitive capacity we have to pay attention, and just placing it on just one thing. And maybe even in the time that the bell was ringing, you some other thoughts came into your mind, and then you kind of said, no, actually what I'm supposed to be doing right now is listening to this bell. So that's the technology of mindfulness, is picking out something that we're going to attend to and then noticing that we drifted off of it and then just coming back to whatever it was that we intended to do. So it's pretty simple. It's simple to talk about. It's not necessarily easy to do. So here's this is what this is, just one thing, how to use mindfulness to stay focused, to stay more focused perhaps. I see people smiling, like right, stay focused. So this is kind of a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. 3 of the negative consequences of the many. There's certainly more than 3, but I'm just going to kind of highlight 3 consequences of distraction. I'm going to go over the fight, flight, flee, and mood theory. I kind of go over this, I would say, every time I talk, and the reason that I do is it took me 4 years of listening to these 2 ideas for me to actually internalize what these theories are saying. And so I just kind of touch on it. I'm not going to spend as much time with it as I can. What is mindfulness? How do we pay attention? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then what are some mindful ways to bring what are some ways to bring mindfulness to technology, including, interestingly enough, a number of technological ways to bring mindfulness to our use of media. And then the last thing is the difficult truth about mindfulness. So here's another experiment already. So whenever we see a boat, we're doing an experiment. So how many people have some kind of communicating device in your possession right now? How many people don't have a communicating device? Okay, all right. So you're going to have to just watch the others do this. But everybody that has a laptop or a smartphone or something with them, I would like you to get it out. And this wouldn't count if you're like me and you have a dumb phone. So this only works if you have a smartphone. So, is there anybody here besides me that has a dumb phone? Way to go. Okay, so now I'd like you to check your email. Just take a minute and check in on your email. And so I'd like you to notice right now if you're breathing or not. So a majority of people, when they check their email, hold their breath. So are people holding their breaths? You noticing you're holding your breath? Yeah. So why do people think we do that? Why do we hold our breath when we check our email? What do you think?
I think it's always going to be some type of problem or somebody asking you to do something, you know?
Yeah, okay, some kind of problem.
I think you're just frustrated that your email won't load up.
You're frustrated that your email won't load up. It won't load up. So that definitely, yeah. So even having to wait for your email to get here, whether it's going to have good news or bad news, is frustrating at times. There's too many emails. What else? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and usually when we're focused on one thing, we're not holding our breath. I mean, that's part of it. Many of the things that we do, we're just automatically breathing while we're doing it. And so people, when they notice this phenomena, which they actually have given a name to, email apnea. So people have heard of sleep apnea, which is where people briefly stop breathing many, many times during the night. When they noticed people started doing this, they called it email apnea. It seems to me, I think that you pretty much hit it. Sometimes it's somebody emailing you to tell you they want to give you $1 million, or that you just won the lottery, or that they're madly in love with you. But often it's some kind of demand, and the thing is, when we turn it on, we don't know what's going to be there, and so that makes us tend to hold our breath. And what happens when we hold our breath is, so I think I'll do the other experiment now as well. Okay, so I'd like you to turn your media completely off now. And if you can put it away from you, like on the floor or off your body, that would be even better. If you can just, unless somebody in your family is having a baby or something like that, and you have reason to know that this instant, then we'll just leave it off. Okay, so here's the second brief experiment. So I'd like you to find another person. This just turn to somebody near you, or just pair up with another person. And you'll need to be able to hear one another. So, okay, has everybody got a person? And normally we would do this, I would have you set the stopwatch on your phone or someplace, but we're not going to do this because it's going to be easy enough for you to tell. Okay, so one person is just going to be the observer and the other person is going to be the doer. So negotiate among yourselves who's going to do what. Okay, all right. Okay. So ready? Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is just doers, turn to the observer, and I want you to count from 1 to 10. I'd like you to count from 1 to 10 as quickly as you can. Okay, okay. And now I'd like, same thing, doer, I'd like you to turn to the listener, and I'd like you to say the alphabet from A to J. Same, quickly as you can. Okay, right. So that's a second and a half, right? Okay. So now here's the third part of the experiment. I'd like you, once again, the doer is doing, the listener's listening. I'd like you to go 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and go up to 10J. Okay? Okay. Okay. So what did you notice about the difference between doing one thing at a time and doing two things at a time?
Yeah, you got very confused.
Very, very, very confused. So, and on average, it takes about 10 times. It takes about 10 seconds compared to about 1.5 to do that third task. So when we are switching back and forth between two tasks, rather than just focusing in on one, that's what's going on up in our heads. The amount of time it takes to kind of push the reset button and get back on task is considerable. And if you're doing some kind of creative thing, if you're deep in your office writing, an essay or something, and somebody distracts you, it can take up to 25 minutes to get back embedded in what you were doing. And so that's the price, that's one of the prices that we're paying for distraction. So,
What did you say at the beginning, when switching back and forth between two tasks?
right.
I didn't hear.
Oh, it can take up to 10 times as long. Mm-hmm. So here's three negative consequences of distraction. And when I'm using distraction, I'm just assuming we all know what I'm talking about. So the level of distraction has risen astronomically, it seems like, year by year. So when did smartphones, so first we had cell phones that could ring all the time, and things that could pop up on you could be notified. I'm thinking back to AOL, when something notified you that you had mail when you were. So that's, like 15 years ago or something. So we've gone forward until now, many, many people. So how many people do have smartphones that you can read your emails on? So most people, and particularly I would say people of a certain age, almost everybody has smartphones. So that means that in real time, people can send you emails, they can tweet, your people can call, though people don't seem to really answer very often anymore. They mainly refer, and texting. So there's all these. So when we're talking about distraction, that's what I'm talking about, is the way in which we are constantly being impinged upon by technology unless we turn it off, and we are distracted. So the consequences of distraction, the first one are that it reduces our ability to stay on task, and so that's kind of what we just experienced. Trying to go back and forth between counting and saying the alphabet, it was much more difficult because we were trying to do two things at once. It's harder to access your creativity, so it's way harder, particularly to write some kind of narrative, some kind of essay, some kind of thoughtful document, because you don't have time to fully develop any ideas if you're constantly being distracted. And it reduces productivity. And so I meant to copy this information out of this book, and I forgot to do that this morning, and I'm not going to look it up. But it was something like 7 weeks a year that we are losing by being distracted. It was an incredible amount. In the average 8-hour day, people are really producing only about 5.5 hours because of the amount of time they're being distracted by media. So it really reduces productivity everywhere, on the workplace, but it also reduces productivity, I think, in the classroom. So that's one thing. The second thing is increasing dependence on social media can result in a decrease in the capacity for people to socially interact one-on-one or in a small group. And I would say this just as an observation, not as necessarily as a criticism, but Dennis mentioned that for about 10 years, I've been a field liaison for Aurora University, which means I go and visit about 30 field placements, places where social work students are learning, they're doing the equivalent of a student teaching. So they're doing that, and I just come to make sure that everything is going well. And what people are saying to me in the last 5 years is that increasingly students who come to their placements can't express themselves verbally in a written way and are having increasing difficulty in verbally being able to express why they want to be a social worker, why they want to do this kind of work, which is kind of the most fundamental thing that we want to be able to express about ourselves, is why do we want to do the job that we want to do, and why is that exciting to us, or why is it interesting? And because people are so reliant on the shortcuts that are involved in using a lot of social media, it's increasingly difficult for people to fully express themselves. And this third thing, I just got a psychology magazine, and it happened to have an article about it in it, and then there's a resource that I'm going to give you at the end, which is a New York Times series on the brain and the computer, and it cited the same thing. And so students who are in this room right now, I'm saying this to you because you will be parents. Probably the majority of you aren't parents now, but you will be parents. The fact that parents are increasingly kind of lugging their children around with them, but they're not actually with them. They're on their phones, they're on their tablets, they're emotionally completely unavailable. And the psychology magazine was indicating that there's some really difficult disorders that seem to be developing in kind of the youngest age of children that are like attachment disorders, that the only time you used to see them, frankly, were children who had been in orphanages and were not given appropriate social interaction. They didn't have adults coming and interacting with them. So this is kind of a really frightening idea when you really think about it. That and I would have to say, not only have I seen it, I mean, I've seen it, I think, in my own family. I think of my son being at football games or soccer games or whatever, and he's off on the side of the field, managing his work, because his work, that's the other, honestly, it's another negative consequence, is everybody is kind of expected to be at work 24/7. And so there's a number of kinds of jobs. If you are a troubleshooter, people get in touch with you all the time. So these are some pretty serious things to think about. So the fight and flight and flee and freeze, which I didn't put up there, response is automatic, it's wired into us, it can be triggered by real or imagined threats, and it can become a habitual response, and it has both physical and cognitive effects. And if you take anatomy and physiology or any kind of biology, you'll go over this. You'll go over the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and a whole cascade of things that get triggered once you perceive something as a threat. Mood theory, Robert Thayer is a man who now probably about 30 years ago, did really the first systematic study of mood that has ever been done. And he had a likely group of people to experiment with. He is a university instructor, so he had a lot of students, and what he did was have them carry, now undoubtedly they would be carrying little tiny tablets or some kind of little thing that would ring periodically, but periodically he had them stop and assess their mood, and he had them assess 5 variables that were physical and 5 variables that were emotional. And so out of doing that repeatedly, he developed, having them do this and looking at the data, he developed a theory of mood. And so his mood theory has these it's a 2-axis model and it's a 4-state model. And I don't know, I say this all the time, I don't know why this particular theory isn't better known in people who do what I do for a living, or people who are counselors or what have you, because it's a really interesting way to think about moods and calm energy, and that is a mood that people have when they meditate. So they're calm, their mind is calm, but their energy is they're not tired. So on that axis, the tired to energy, they're not tired. They're relaxed and alert. And if those of you that have done yoga, this is frequently when people do that kind of last relaxation thing at the end. That's kind of how you feel. You're not like exhausted, you're kind of awake, but you feel really calm. Tense energy is the way that most of us are often. So our energy is good, but we're kind of bunched up would be one of the words that he used. We're kind of feeling pressure about something, maybe is an email coming or not. Tense and tired is kind of the worst possible way to feel. So this is the way that people feel around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're really exhausted, but your mind is still really going. So your body feels exhausted and your mind is still going. And then calm tiredness is hopefully the way that we feel before we go to bed. So our mind has calmed down, our body is tired, and hopefully we're going to go to sleep. So that's just a quick run through both of those. So what does this have to do with distraction? So at the end I'm going to talk a little about this book, because much of what I have it on the last slide if you want to write it down. Because when I read this book, it just made a lot of things that I had been thinking about more coherent. So he uses a number of examples about the way that technology becomes hardwired into people's bodies. And so he gives a really interesting experiment where they've trained a rhesus monkey to just use his mind to operate a robot. So it's an interesting thing that you can eventually do that with your thought processes. And they're doing a lot of research with prosthetic limbs, and it's the same thing. People are learning to use the muscles in the part of their body that the prosthesis is attached to, and they're finding that eventually people are going to be able to manage prosthetic devices using only their mind. So this is a pretty amazing, remarkable thing. So what he says is that our phones have become a part of our body. And so when our phone rings or vibrates, we don't experience it as something separate from us. And 2 of the examples that he uses are phantom vibrating. So how many people have had the experience of that? Okay. So that means that if you routinely carry, and it's usually down here, it's not up where my pocket is, people often carry their phone either here in a leg pocket or up here in a chest pocket, and they have it on vibrate often. And you get extra nerve cells where you carry your phone to notice, because you have this kind of heightened awareness of, is it ringing, is it going to ring? You're kind of in this state of anticipation really all the time. Is somebody trying to get hold of me? Is somebody texting me? Is somebody tweeting me? Am I missing something? I had emailed Dennis this morning. I had sent something over, and then I was kind of waiting to hear back from him, and before I went and did something else. So I have a dumb phone, so I had to keep going to the computer. So I kept going to the computer and looking and saying, did I hear back from Dennis yet? And then I did, and then so that's that same kind of thing, except if you're waiting to hear from a lot of people, you're attending to that spot where the phone is, and you actually get more nerve cells there. And so what happens is that people begin to think that the phone is vibrating, and it's not. So that's a phantom vibration, and people can actually think that the phone is there vibrating, and the phone isn't there. So that's so phantom limb is something where when people have had an amputation, they still perceive the limb being there, and this is a similar kind of thing. So it's wired in. And then the other example of that is called sleep texting. So anybody ever get a very peculiar text from somebody in the middle of the night? Yep. So and you figure out the person is sleep texting. So yeah. So the part of what he said is that we used to memorize phone numbers up here. We used to be able to say people's phone numbers, and I think there was probably a time when I had 30 or 40 phone numbers in my head. I just knew 30 or 40 phone numbers because that's how you remembered them. Then we had the phones that had the 9 plus 1, and so people knew how to dial people by punching in their numbers. Now people's fingers remember things by texting, by how they text. And often if you ask somebody how to spell something, they would do this now. They would text it. So that's it's a kind of another example of how technology is actually getting hardwired into us. So what's the difficulty with that, and how does it relate to the fight or flight and to the mood business? So I think that's okay. So I'm just going to go over this and talk about it in here. So when we're stressed, our speeding thing speeds up. Our field of awareness is reduced. We are less able to develop new and unique responses, and we tend to fall back on old, repetitive responses. We don't develop new things, we fall back on the old ones. And so my belief is that as we become stressed in the midst of our so if you're in a stressful conversation, or you're under some kind of pressure and you're sitting down with your computer, your tendency to stay on the computer and to automatically respond to stimuli coming from the computer is increased. You are less likely to say to yourself, I really need to take a break right now and think about X, Y, or whatever. Think about what I'm needing to be working on. The very act of being anxious about it is increasing the fact that you'll probably keep on doing it. So if you're playing, I can't remember, what's the auto theft thing? What is Grand Theft Auto? If you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you know that you actually have a paper due for biology, the stress of thinking about the paper increases the chances that you're going to go on playing Grand Theft Auto. So I don't know that there's proof of this, but this is what I'm believing from the research that I've read. Okay. And then the mood, the kind of place that it interfaces with mood is, these are things that we do to try to manage our mood, all the way from kind of the best thing, which is active mood management, which would involve meditating or noticing that you're kind of in a bad mood or that you're feeling anxious and taking a walk. So you actively say, my mood is a little off. I'm actively going to go and do something about it. And the second thing that we do is seek pleasurable activities and distractions. And so once again, I think if people are in a bad mood, if people are feeling anxious or uptight or worried about something, technology is a really easy kind of out to distract ourselves. And so I think I would have to say, this is something that I periodically just perceive in myself. I'll be ready to go to bed. I won't have anything else to do on the computer. And I stay there, and it's kind of like, it feels to me a lot like I want something else to eat. It's a similar kind of feeling to that. I want a little more stimulation. I just want to read one more thing, or I want to do one more thing. And it's a really interesting, and as I've been doing the research for this presentation, I really paid attention to that, because you're kind of looking, does anybody else know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So it's time to get off the computer. Of course, I guess when you have that kind of technology, you never really get off of it, do you? No. Everybody's saying, no, you don't you're just on it. Well, people that still have a computer actually turn it off and walk away from it. So that's interesting. So that sense of I want to end this now. Do people have that? If you have a smartphone, do you have that sense? I want to turn this phone off now, or I need some time away.
I think I do, but it's really hard to stop. I got Instagram on my phone.
Uh-huh.
And there's always some new picture of something that I want to look at. It's really hard to put it away.
So what do other people notice about that?
Are you saying you intentionally turn it off and say, I'm done for the
I'm done for the night.
night?
I'm turning it off. I'm done for the night.
I don't know that we do that anymore. I
What?
don't know that we do that anymore.
Okay, you don't do that. Yeah.
I think,
Do you?
I don't know.
What?
I remember reading a study one time where it said that your mind isn't fully, kind of shut down even when your phone is on, just because it kind of radiates that energy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it is, and that's what it's like. It's like an energy. That's when I'm saying it's hardwired into our body. There have been times when there's been like something difficult going on in my family, where I've put the telephone, and they can only phone me, like under a blanket or something. It's like I want to hear it, but I don't want to hear it. It's that kind of thing. So how many people never turn their device off 24/7? Okay, all right. So, all right. So let me talk about that then. Okay. So we're going to do another experiment. This is a good time to do another experiment. And so this is going to be a little longer, so you can put everything down off your laps. And so this is going to be, and especially don't have your phone on your body. As a matter of fact, be really daring. So are they off? Are they really truly off? Okay. All right. Yeah. Turn it really truly off, so you can't be waiting for it right now, because it's not. It's out of the whatever, the ether, whatever connects it. Okay. So we're going to do a mindfulness activity, and I'd like you to sit. We're just going to be sitting, but I'd like you to sit up. I'll sit down, and although I think the last time I did this, I ruined the microphone by sitting down. I'll sit down very gingerly. I don't want to ruin the microphone. So we're going to sit in what Jon Kabat-Zinn calls a dignified upright position. So that means that you don't have to sit on the edge of the chair like I am, but you just want to be sitting up. And the reason you want to be sitting up is you want to give your lungs the maximum capacity that they can to expand and contract. And then you can put your hands on your legs, or you can just fold them, whatever you want to just. The idea is we're going to just breathe a little bit, and we want this going to be comfortable. This is going to be relaxing. This is going to be okay, all right? So just sit like that and close your eyes, because I'm not going to be doing anything up here for you to see. I'm just going to be hitting this bell a couple of times. So I'd like you just to take a moment to feel yourself fully in the chair. So just noticing your feet on the floor, really feeling connected to the floor. Feeling your seat resting on the chair. Chair supporting you right now. You don't have to put any energy into sitting. And then just gently bring your attention to your breathing. And so this isn't thinking about your breathing, this is actually just observing your breathing. Our breathing is the only physical activity we have that's both conscious and automatic. And so we're moving from it being automatic. Obviously, we've all been breathing really regularly here for 45 minutes, or we would have fallen over. But we're going to become intentional about noticing. When I ask you to observe your breath, where in your body do you notice that? Where do you feel the fact that you're breathing? So sometimes people feel that in their upper chest. Feel their upper chest rising and falling. Sometimes people feel their ribs expanding as they breathe in, and then contracting as they breathe out. Sometimes people feel the pressure of their abdomen against their pants, against their waistband. So when you breathe in, your lungs fill up and your body expands. It's full of air. And then when you breathe out, it just contracts. So just pick one place where that's the most vivid, that experience of breathing. And that's going to be home base for the next minute or two. You're just going to watch that the same way that you would be watching the waves if you were sitting down at the lake. It's what our breath is like. We just fill up with breath and then it empties out. So I'm going to hit the bell once and just watch your breath. Your mind is going to drift away. You're going to notice a noise outside the room, or a thought is going to come up about something that you're going to do later on today. Just notice that. Notice that you were distracted, and then just come back and watch the breath again. That's completely the way we are to have our attention go away. And then you're going to put a little effort in to bringing it back. So I'm going to hit the bell, and we'll just do this for like 2 minutes, just watching the breath. And just notice where your mind is, and notice if it drifted away, and if it did, just come back. Just come back to this really simple task of just watching the breath coming and going. And then just as we stop, just listen to the bell again before you open your eyes. So, thank you. So what was that like for people doing that?
It was really nice.
What was nice about it?
Not thinking about anything, really.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
My mind's always thinking about many
Yeah, and you did it. Yeah, it's always thinking, and she did it with her thumbs. Yeah, yeah. It's always engaged. So that's, what else did people notice?
I noticed that at first in the beginning it was hard for me to calm my, try to do what you asked us to do.
Mhm.
And I noticed that when you hit that bell, I was in, what's those quadrants you gave us? I was calm, but I was in attention.
Calm energy, right.
I was in attention calm.
Right.
I don't know, I was like, what am I supposed to, am I doing it right?
Yeah.
What am I listening for? I was paying a lot of attention, and I think, again, that tension was there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Still.
What did other people notice? Nothing? Yeah.
It was nice to have some time that I wasn't worried about my phone going off.
Yeah, yeah. Did anybody else feel that at all? It was nice to have some time to not worry about my phone going off. Did anybody else feel that? Yeah, yeah. Or were you really worried? Are you worried right now? Oh my gosh, she made us put the phone off and put it away from our bodies. All my friends are probably gathering together and having a great time, and I'm here and I'm not, they're leaving me out. We feel like that, don't we? We feel like that. We feel that sense, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss, and now there's like an infinite number of things that you can miss, including what my brother sent me on Facebook today, which was about goats. So this is what technology has come to, is we're sending each other, in my age group, they say, there's only a certain number of cute kittens that you can see before you just really don't need to see that anymore. Or bridges made out of flowers, or who knows, anyhow. There is an infinite number of things not to miss. And unfortunately, as Jon Kabat-Zinn points out, what we're missing is our life. That's what we're missing. We're missing our life where we're just fully embodied, standing somewhere being quiet. We're missing that. If we're 24 hours a day on alert, if the fight or flight system is always turned on, we're never fully present to our life. We're never fully present. I have to say, I was very surprised. I went this weekend with a friend to her cabin in Wisconsin, and I've been going up there with her for 40 years. And she used to really complain about a third friend of ours who always brought her computer up there and worked. Well, I did not. I did actually. I took this up because I needed to finish the slides for this, but I got a repetitive computer injury last week on this finger because I was really tense and I was apparently like, typing like that. So I wasn't on it very much at all, and my phone wouldn't work up there. So I had a great time from Friday night until we came home Sunday night, last night. I couldn't get any messages. I couldn't get any goats or cats or anything like that, and her phone was going off all the time, and I was so surprised to experience that. She must, and her phone made this little bing, and I thought, oh my gosh, you've gone over to the dark side, You're on your phone all the time, and you're kind of on all the time. So what can we do about that? So this is what we just did. We just did mindfulness. So it's paying attention in a sustained and particular way on purpose. So we did this on purpose in the present moment, and it's non-judgmental. So in mindfulness, there is no good or bad. There is no I like this, I hate that. It's just, this is what's here right now. This is what's here right now. So that's what it is. So he says we engage in systematically regulating our attention and our energy. So we are taking charge of our attention and our energy, and we're influencing and possibly transforming the quality of our experience. And I think it sounds like some of you just had that. So we intentionally took charge of these few moments, and the quality of our experience was different than it is under other circumstances. And then he says it's because we want to realize the full range of our humanity and our relationships to others in the world. And so we want to do it because we want to be 100% who we are and who we're able to be. So we can be the best person that we can be in the world, in this world, so we can be attentive to other people and to the world. And how different is that than from this thing that people are really concerned about parents being with their children and never really being fully present because they're engaged with their technology. So mindfulness is the exact 100% and total opposite of that. It's choosing to turn really everything off and just be present to whatever is in front of us. So this goes back to the fight or flight thing and to the, I just wanted to kind of revisit that, and to the mood theory thing. So the two most useful things that we can do to help reset ourselves if our fight or flight reaction has gotten set off is to focus on our breath or to walk. Regular exercise, but in particular to walk. So the two most useful things you can do in response to or to regulate your fight or flight response, because it is going to get triggered. The first is to actually learn how to use your breath. So to learn how to do what we just did, except to know how to do that on your own, and to notice when you've gotten derailed, and to be able to use your breath to calm yourself down. And the second is to get up and move around. And so I have a very primitive way that I do this, which is when I'm on the computer. I set the kitchen timer. I set the timer on my microwave for 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, I get up and do something else for depending on what it is I'm trying to do, but for 5 or 10 minutes. You know, if when I was working on this, the slides at my friend's cabin, I worked on them for about a half an hour, and then I went out and I walked for a half an hour because I was trying to digest the stuff that was in this book, and it wasn't really coming together for me in a way that I liked. And so I went out and I took a long walk. And and then interestingly enough, we already saw Thayer, but Thayer says exactly the same things. So we saw that. The managing the mood, the first thing is to consciously determine that you're in a bad mood, and then to either do a meditative experience or some kind of mindful, like a relaxation tape, doing yoga, or some kind of physical exercise. So I want to talk a little bit about these 3 things that you can do in particular. So the first is just taking 3 breaths and smiling. So once again, I'd like you to, even though we didn't get a boat, I'd like to just try this really quick. So you can just put your stuff down. And I'm going to hit the bell, and by now, even by now, just this short period of time, the bell is you're beginning to set up an entrainment with the bell. So you're beginning to associate the bell with something that is good, that is something that is relaxing and that's resetting your button, unless you hate it. So you might hate what we're doing right now, in which case the bell, you go, oh no, she's going to hit the bell again, my Lord. But you can find anything in your environment and have it be a signal to you. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a monk who teaches mindfulness, has a big, huge bell. When he travels around, he has a bell that looks exactly like this, and it sits on a little cushion, but it's like about this big. And so it's got this really it's got this really deep thing. And he gets a child who's there in the audience, and they get to be in charge of inviting the bell to sound. That's what he calls it, which is so great. And so the kid just gets to go up whenever they're kind of in the mood, except hits it really hard. It's really loud. And then everybody, everywhere, wherever they are, if they're sitting and listening to a lecture, if they're in the middle of the dining room, everybody stops right where they are whenever they hear the bell. And they take 3 breaths and smile. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to hit it one more time. And just close your eyes if you're willing. And all you want to do is take 3 breaths like you did. So by the 3rd one, you should be able to maybe feel your breath kind of dropping down a little bit in your body. And then you just want to smile a little bit, and you can keep your eyes closed so we won't see one another smiling and feel like really embarrassed. So keep your 3 breaths and a smile, okay? Okay, thanks. So how was that? Were did people able to tap in a little to that quietness just from that short thing? So Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that every time we come to a stop sign, we do this. We pick something in our environment out that we see all the time, like a stop sign or a stoplight, that every time we come to an intersection and we get the red light, rather than getting really mad and saying, oh, I got the red light, I can't get where I'm going, we say, oh, it's my mindful signal. It's my signal to take 3 breaths and smile. Thank you, red light. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to sit here in my car for just a minute and come back to myself. So that's what he says about this bell. He says, how quickly the sound of the bell brings me back to my true self. So we can pick something in our environment, and you can actually, and I'll show you in a minute, you can actually download an app on your phone to make a sound like this, and when you heard it, you could take 3 breaths and smile, okay? The second thing that you can do is just counting your breath. So you can sit, find a place in your home that's quiet and sit for 5 minutes and just do the kind of breathing that I showed you earlier, and just count to 4 and go back and start again, Go back and start again. So do that. Set your stopwatch on your phone. Turn your phone off except for the watch, and count your breath for 5 minutes. And the last thing is mindful walking. And so that's, once again, leaving your phone in your house and going outside or leaving it in your car here. It's a beautiful place to walk around. This is incredible. I went to this school when there was one Quonset hut across the street. Those buildings that they tore down, they weren't even built yet when I came here to COD. And I was a student here, and then I taught here for 10 years, and now I live across the street from here. So I come over here and I walk around the campus on a regular basis. It's a beautiful campus. This is an incredibly beautiful campus. And you could go out and put your stuff in your car and just walk around some of the buildings and breathe and look at the trees, because there's a bunch of them to look at, okay? So those are ways to shift your mood and to reset your fight or flight. Okay, so now here's a bunch of help from a surprising source. So the surprising source is your computer. So who knows about freedom? Does anybody in the room know about freedom? Okay, so I went and looked, contemplative computing is this man whose name I'm not going to pronounce because it's Korean and I'm afraid I will murder it. But if you just Googled the distraction addiction, you would find him. And that is the name of his website, Contemplative Computing. And so almost everything that I'm going to talk about in this list I got from this book. So this man says that if you want to get off of autopilot with your computer, if you want to get free from constantly waiting for what's going to happen or being kind of on listening all the time, if you want to get rid of that, you yourself are going to have to take charge. And you're going to have to take charge by having your relationship with your computer, with your technology, be something that you're in charge of. And so this website, and I just went and looked at it this morning, to be perfectly honest, it is full of ideas. He's got a terrific talk. It's about 20 minutes that he gave, something that looks to me like it was TED in France. It looked like a TED talk, but it was something else. He gave a talk at a conference of, wasn't alternative schools, but it was a group of teachers, and there were 5,000 people there. And I was able to find that really easily on Google as well, because his ideas about the technology don't involve getting rid of it. They don't involve saying, oh my goodness, technology is bad, it's causing all these troubles, let's just throw it away and go back to pencils. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But he is saying, if you want to have some quality to your life and you want to use technology regularly, then you need to take charge of it. And the website, Contemplative Computing, will show you how to do it. So one of the things he talked about is freedom. And freedom is an app, and I was not going to pay $10 for it today because I'm going to get it, but I wasn't sure which one of my two computers I wanted to put it on. It's $10. And when you get on it, it asks you, how much freedom would you like? And you tell it an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and it takes you offline, and you cannot get back online again unless you reboot your computer. And so you decide. And then if you reboot, you're saying to yourself, well, apparently I'm not. I mean, you could do it for 15 minutes. I mean, it looks to me like he talks regularly about doing it for like 4 hours, getting offline. But it's a very interesting idea, and you can put it obviously on all your technology. So that's freedom. dark room or right room. So dark room is a Windows app and right room is the Mac app. This gives you, and once again, I just was not going to try and experiment with all this stuff. And I was in Wisconsin where I had no media, so I didn't do it, and I'm so glad. It gives you apparently a blank page in 4 fonts. So it gives you a really minimal amount of technology and the freedom to write. So those of us like myself who really have spent much of my life writing by hand, I'm definitely going to look into this because I find writing on the trying to create content on the computer really, really challenging. And obviously, I'm not nearly as wired in as people that are younger than myself. A mindful clock, there's several mindful clock apps, and you really do, you download, it's a bell that sounds like this. You can set it to be random, you can set it to be every 15 minutes. There's one that you can set something that sounds like a big clock, bong, on the hour, and then it has these smaller ones on 15 minutes or random. So I think it's really nice to have something that periodically you ask yourself that signals you. And you ask yourself, am I doing what I said I was going to do? If I sat down in front of this computer and I said I was going to write a book report, and if I'm over Instagramming my friends, is that what I want to choose to do? So what he's talking really about, all of these strategies and the whole idea of mindfulness is getting off your autopilot and getting yourself in charge. So it isn't about not throwing these things away, but it's about choosing to be the one that uses them rather than the one that responds to them, rather than the automatic response, which we have when it beeps in the middle of the night. We didn't say, I think I'll wake up at 3 o'clock and see what my friends are doing. Our friends are apparently up at 3 o'clock and they wanted to see what you were doing. So that's another one. 2 minutes to do nothing. So this one I did download. It's just a little app, and it was so funny. So it's an ocean, but honestly, it isn't a living ocean. If I was going to do this for 2 minutes, I would like to see a real ocean with the waves actually moving. This is a picture of the ocean, and you can hear gulls in the background, and it shows up at the top, there's a countdown clock. So it's 2 minutes of doing nothing, and then it says, don't touch your mouse or your whatever else, some other thing, your whatever. And I wasn't going to sit there for 2 minutes because I was trying to get this and send it over to Dennis. The minute I touched my mouse over where the countdown thing was, it's a big red thing, failed, So I failed doing nothing for 2 minutes. But I think it's a great idea. So you can interrupt yourself in the middle of everything, and now that you know how to do 3 breaths and smile, you could probably do 3 breaths and smile 3 times during those 2 minutes. And then a digital Sabbath, which for people that are on for 24 hours, you might try it for like 4 hours. So if you are people who are on 24/7, this is worth trying. It's worth trying for 4 hours or 6 hours. Turning everything off. Turning everything off. Turning the phone off, turning the computer off, turning the tablet off, turning the whatever. And just seeing what that's like. Seeing what that's like to not have all that stimulus. Turn everything off and go outside. Take a walk. One of the things that he talks about in his book is the number of, he mentions quite a number of people who either invented or discovered things. And he talks about reading biographies about them and the amount of time that they spent walking. So he has a picture in here of a path that Charles Darwin made where he lived. He lived a couple of hours outside London. And he actually made this circuit. He rented a field from his neighbor, and he made a circuit, and he really very carefully landscaped it so there was interest there, but there was containment. And he walked on it, they figured, 2 hours every day for 30 years. And he also said how many, 70,000 hours, I think is what that is. And during the time that he was doing that walking, he wrote 5 books. He also cited Crick and Watson, the people, the double helix people, and the fact that their biography refers to them walking around London debating about what could this look like? What could this is a DNA, you know, and they developed this 3-dimensional way that looks kind of like a spiral staircase. And that came out of walking. Are there people here that have had that experience of having something that you're trying to work on and disconnecting? I think for other people it might be doing sports. So it might be playing basketball or going out and running or playing golf. I think this is something that people, if they leave their stuff at home, have that experience of you're really getting out of the way of your cognitive brain, and then it turns out that it solves problems for you. So here's the end. It's good. The difficult truth about mindfulness. So part of what Alex talks about in his talk is that it used to be that people did a lot of experiments on themselves. So, and he referred, actually, interestingly enough, so a lot of medical things people discovered by actually, like the guy that in the smallpox vaccine, he gave himself cowpox and saw, oh gosh, I gave myself cowpox and now I'm exposed to smallpox and I didn't get it. So during a couple of those centuries, maybe 2 centuries ago, that's how a lot of discoveries were made by people experimenting with themselves. And he said that's kind of gone out of favor, but now it's come back again. So he's asking you to do a case study of one, which is to examine yourself. And even though this isn't a Buddhist talk, I have to say that that's what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, try this out. Try this out. Try sitting down and meditating and seeing how the world turns out for you. So be a case study of one. Don't. So he's not giving a lot of advice for everybody to do. This is advice just for you to do. So mindfulness is a good idea, but it's actually also something that you have to do. So it seems to me in the last couple of years that that's really the only thing I have to say when I get to the end of these talks, is this is a great technology, mindfulness, and the only way you will get it is by doing it. And doing it means you can go on YouTube and you can get Jon Kabat-Zinn giving you a 20-minute guided meditation, and you can play it twice a day, every day, for 6 weeks, and you can notice the quality of your life after you've done that. I'm just using him as an example. There's probably 100 million people on YouTube teaching you how to meditate. And my advice is pick somebody that has at least 300,000 likes. Don't go with the guy that's got 7, listens. So pick one of the people more better known teachers. But that is absolutely, you could do this on your smartphone. You would have to exclude everything else, but so you have to, this is what it means. What does it mean to practice mindfulness? That's what it means. It means you have to go somewhere where it's quiet. You have to turn everything off. And you have to say to your family members, I'm in there being quiet, leave me alone, and don't send the dogs in either. And you have to sit there and follow your breath, or do some other kind of meditation that makes sense to you. So there's some that are much more body-based, but pick out one thing and try it. Try it for 6 or 8 weeks, and see what you notice. But that's what it means to practice. It means to do it every day, and it means that you do it whether you feel like it or not. It means that you do it whether you, so it's the same. So practicing mindfulness is the same as practicing the piano or practicing being a goalie and keeping the puck out of the net, or practicing. We were talking about a man making spaghetti. There was somebody over in the culinary thing, and he was demonstrating making spaghetti without any machinery at all. So he made it from scratch, and then he made it with his fingers. How long do you think that he practiced that before he was able to do that? So somebody named Malcolm Gladwell, and he has an essay on this topic. And who would it be? Ted Williams, was he a big, anybody know? No one knows. I think he was a big home run hitter probably back in the 50s. He figured he spent 10,000 hours in his basement. He put a baseball on a would be like a bungee cord. It wasn't that then, but it was something like that. And he stood down in his basement when he was a kid, and he had this ball there, and he just did this. 10,000 hours, he did it. You know, Itzhak Perlman, how long do you think he practiced the violin? So practicing is what it means to practice mindfulness. And actually there's some famous monks that they've done a lot of neurology, a lot of real-time fMRIs on, and that's what they estimate, that these guys have meditated for 10,000 hours. You don't have to meditate for 10,000 hours. It's a lot of evidence, people practicing 20 minutes a day for 8 weeks show marked changes in the construction of their brain. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. If you want these benefits, you actually have to do this. And Dennis and I keep talking about trying to have some place at the school that would support this, because I think that people, I mean, there's some faces I see here that I've seen before, you know. I think people are interested in this. I think people are willing to kind of give this a try. And I think if there was a place on this campus that it was easily accessible, where over the lunch hour you could go and there was like a half an hour thing, and there was like a little 10-minute introduction to meditation, and you practice for 20 minutes. I bet there's some students here that would give it a try. So that's my, you know, and Dennis has enough to do. So I'm thinking of coming over here and just saying I'd like to be a volunteer and do that, because I really think that this is worthwhile. I think that we're in danger as a culture of losing our minds because we're losing the capacity to initiate thoughtful action. And I don't want to see that happen. So thank you. And are there any questions? We have about 10 minutes.
I'm a quick summary to get wrap up that if a student wants to focus on his studies, what should he do? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh yeah. So if a student wants to study on his, I mean, I think the short answer is to learn to get in control of their technology. And that probably is going to involve experimenting with turning it off from time to time. But they have to decide to do it.
But if he's reading like a chapter, and how he can best arrange his time to get the maximum benefit out of that material from that book, he's reading a book in the chapter.
If he's reading a book,
Yeah, if he's reading at any particular topic, he has turned off all his gadgets. Still, his mind is, flying to different,
he has to learn some mindfulness. Yeah, yeah. And that takes practice. Yeah. Thank you.